Can I use 3D modeling to help me draw pixel art? We're gonna find out in this video. Today we'll be going over the process of how I made both the 3D environment and the pixel art to help me make this short animatic. There were quite a few hiccups in this process, so I'll try to include any reflections of ways I'd improve this along the way as well. So, let's jump into it! Hello, my name is Jade, and I like to paint with pixels. So, the first step in all of this was to brainstorm some ideas and gather some references. The idea that started this experiment was that I wanted to try using 3D modeling to see if it would help me with drawing perspective in a scene from multiple camera angles. I mentioned before that I wanted to make another animatic similar to my intro for my sketchbook tour, using sounds and small changes in the scene to tell a story. But this time, I wanted to include my little character Fern. I wanted the story of this animatic to be of a simple action, something quite calming. And my initial thoughts were reading a book with some snacks, putting on a face mask, but eventually I settled on making a cup of tea in the kitchen. And with the initial idea settled, I got to brainstorming on an app called GoodNotes. These ended up being very messy notes around what sort of camera angles I wanted to include and the sort of short actions I wanted. It probably makes zero sense to anyone else, but it's okay as these were just for me to get my thoughts on the page. Alongside this, I gathered some references, mainly focused on what made a kitchen cozy. Elements I liked were wooden features, bunting and fairy lights, and lots of greenery. I sketched out a few ideas of the general layout, but kept these quite quick as I'll be focusing more on that when I started the 3D modeling on this. Once I had all of these ready, we moved on to the next stage, which is the block out. To block out the scene, I decided to use Blender, and this is where stuff started to go wrong. For context, I haven't used Blender in about 3 years, according to Steam, and let's just say I was a little rusty. Do the thing that everyone does. Oh god, I don't even know how you add a new cube back in. It's a keyframe. Oh my god, what does any of this mean? Okay, God, what all the... That just changes this. Oh my god. Okay, I do need a tutorial. I don't even know how to select a vert. So, I ended up switching to a different tool, and this one works in a similar way. You can create and model 3D objects, but it's something I'm much more familiar with, and that is Pro Builder in Unity. This feels very niche, I know, but it's something that I've been using for years now for work, so I'm much more accustomed to the controls and the shortcuts. I know this will take me a lot less time to make something that I can just use as a reference for my actual pixel art process. I started off by making the smallest object in the scene and basing the scale of everything else off of that. And in our case, that will be the mug. I was planning on just using cubes to make things super simple and quick, but I ended up making some elements a lot more detailed, such as the plants, as I think it'll help keeping these looking consistent between the different camera angles. I quite enjoyed this part of the process. It may or may not have just been me designing part of my dream kitchen, but hey, you know, a girl can dream. Looking back, this was definitely the right call to just use what I know. I do really want to learn Blender, but I think doing this and trying a bunch of new techniques and trying to learn Blender on top of that might have been a bit too much to do in one go. I think it would be fun to see how far I could get in like a little 7-day challenge learning Blender and incorporating pixel art into that. Might be a fun video in the future. Let me know if you'd like to see that. After I got the main bits blocked out, I started to play around with lighting the scene. Now, lighting, not my strong suit, but I wanted to try something a bit different to my usual way of lighting my art, and have some harsher light that's forming really distinct shadows in the space, especially through a window. I went through a couple of different types of lights, and settled for a directional light for the more defined light source going through the window. Setting up lights made me think that this scene could be really nice for making a cup of tea in the morning, like just when you wake up, with the first bit of light passing through the window, so I wanted to keep that in mind when we got to the drawing phase. Next up, I started to set up the 3 cameras for the different shots that I wanted to do. I found this really useful package in the asset store, which overlays different grid lines to help you use different methods like the rule of thirds and the golden spiral to try and set up your shot. This led me to moving around objects and adding in details to the side of wider shots so that the whole space felt more integrated and like there was more to the space past the camera. Learning about different ways to compose a shot was very new to me, so I just went with very simple rules aligning my points of interest to either the lines on the rule of thirds grid or at one of the points where the lines crossed over. Once I was happy, I took my reference photos for each of the camera angles and moved on to the next step, which was drawing the pixel art. For this step, we're going to be moving over to my drawing app of choice, which is Pixsquare on my iPad. I'm going to be completely honest, I really struggled to start drawing this. I had a lot of trouble picking a nice color scheme and spent a while trying to figure this out. I was trying different blend modes on layers to try and adjust it, and I ended up completely changing the original idea of having sort of a tealy mint green background and lots of different colors for the mugs and books after I accidentally filled the scene with an orange hue and actually really vibed with the result. I did want to try some new techniques with the light and shadows, trying to use blend layers to get a consistent shadow and light. For lighting, it really helped with getting harsher light coming through the windows using a soft light layer. Having the reference to see where the light would hit objects was really useful. Obviously these models are a bit too simple for simulating different materials and how light would react to those, such as if something is more shiny or matte. That's a whole other topic in itself, but if you need to know where light generally hits an object, blocking out the individual models in a really simple way and adding a light source that is indicative to where you have it in your art could be a really good method to try. Adding light through the window went pretty smoothly, but I had troubles getting the shadows right and finding the right blend mode to get the shadows that I liked. I accidentally used the fill bucket tool and filled the whole scene with the multiply layer, and it actually looked really cool and I really liked it. It felt like a nice sunrise early morning vibe that I was aiming for. I thought it was funny that I got it through a happy little accident, and the fact that it happened twice in one project. I might just have to throw colors onto a new layer like this in the future if I'm stuck again, and just start swapping between blend modes. During the stage, I ended up adding a few more details which made the process a little more difficult, but the end result was better for it. I ended up adding tiles to the walls to try and break up the wall a bit, and I liked the addition, but it made it difficult to replicate this in different angles. I was trying to keep count of the tiles so that they were vaguely the same scale at different angles, but that was really difficult. I think this is a detail that I should have added in the modeling stage to make it a lot quicker to reference what goes where. On a similar vein of consistency, I found patterns were really tricky to get right, like the grain of the wood. And I was aiming for a similar but simplified version of the wood grain in the zoomed out shots, and then keeping them vaguely in the same area when it's zoomed in. I'm unsure if this is something else that I should have added in the modeling stage. I really wanted to keep that stage quite loose and simple, so it was quick to do. But I think I need to figure out more of a balance between what details are important to be consistent between shots. I repeated the same steps for each of the shots, and with a bit of editing and sound design, let's take a look at the final result. I am super happy with the final result. I feel like it tells a nice story in an environment that feels pretty consistent. Reflecting on this process, I think it can really help with consistency and getting perspective from different camera angles right, and help you understand lighting as well. As long as you do a lot of prep beforehand on the details that you want to include. And because of that, I feel like it's a useful tool to have, but maybe not to use on every drawing, because it definitely adds a lot more prep to do before you even get to the drawing stage. If you're in the same scene but wanting to capture multiple angles, then this definitely seems like a worthwhile workflow, and I think I'll use it in the future for other projects like this too. With that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see the first little animatic that I made, check out the intro of this sketchbook tour, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care out there. Goodbye!